My brother stole my wife and my family sided with him. Now they're begging for my money. On my 10th birthday, I found my family celebrating around a cake with my brother's name on it. 20 years later, that same brother was in my bed with my wife. Some wounds cut deeper than others. I always knew I didn't belong. Even as a kid, I could feel it in the coldness of their eyes when they looked at me. My name is James, and this is the story of how I became invisible in my own home. When Dad would come home from work, he'd scoop Derek into his arms, tossing him in the air while they both laughed. I'd stand in the doorway waiting for my turn that never came. Just a nod. Maybe a distracted, "Hey sport," if I was lucky. Dinner was the worst. "Derek scored the winning goal today," Mom would beam. "Derek's teacher says he's showing real leadership qualities," Dad would respond. I'd sit quietly, pushing food around my plate, occasionally mentioning an A on a test or a teacher's compliment. They'd mumble, "That's nice," before turning back to my brother. I remember bringing home straight A's in 6th grade. Mom glanced at my report card and said, "Good job," before placing it on the counter. 3 weeks later, Derek won a participation award at a science fair. They took us all out for dinner, ordered champagne for themselves, and Dad made a toast to our little genius. That was the first time I truly understood. I could move mountains and it wouldn't matter. Not to them. My 10th birthday was when all illusion shattered. I'd been dropping hints for weeks about a chocolate cake with my name on it. When I walked into the living room that evening, there was indeed a cake, with "Congratulations, Derek" written in blue icing. My brother had passed a swim test that day. "But it's my birthday," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Mom shrugged. "We forgot, honey, but Derek deserves to be celebrated too, right?" That night, I cried until my pillow was soaked through. It was the last time I allowed myself to expect anything from them. The final blow came when I was 18. I'd been accepted to Princeton, full academic scholarship. Running home, letter clutched in my hand, I thought, finally, they'll have to be proud. I walked through the door to balloons, music, and laughter. For a split second, my heart soared. They remembered something important about me. Then I saw the cake. "Congratulations, Derek." My brother had placed third in a high school track meet. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why can't anything ever be about me?" Mom looked annoyed. "Don't be selfish, James. We can't have Derek feeling left out just because you got into some school." Some school, Princeton, full ride. I packed my bags that night. The next morning, I left without saying goodbye. They didn't try to stop me. College was brutal. I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. My apartment was tiny with a leaky ceiling and neighbors who fought all night. I lived on ramen and coffee, often staying awake for days during finals. Sometimes, staring out my window at 3 a.m., I'd wonder if they even noticed I was gone. I never called to find out. I already knew the answer. When I graduated summa cum laude, I stood alone at the ceremony. I'd learned the most important lesson. I didn't need them anymore. I never had. After graduation, my career took off. I landed a position at a prestigious marketing firm in Chicago, bought a decent apartment, and started building the life I'd always wanted. But despite the success, there was always something missing, someone to share it with. Then I met Lauren. It was at a charity gala my company was hosting. She was representing her law firm, standing by the champagne fountain in a deep blue dress that matched her eyes. When she laughed, the sound cut through the artificial chatter around us. I introduced myself, and for the next 3 hours, we talked as if we'd known each other our whole lives. "You built all this yourself?" she asked when I told her about my journey. "No family help, no connections?" "Just me," I said, waiting for the usual pity. Instead, she touched my hand. "That's incredible, James. That kind of strength, it's rare." For the first time, my past felt like a badge of honor rather than a wound. We married 14 months later. As Lauren and I built our life together, I began to understand what family could actually mean. Support, respect, love without conditions. My childhood faded into a distant memory. I had someone who chose me, who saw me. What more could I need? Then, after 7 years of silence, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I'd deleted but never forgotten. "Hey bro, long time. I know Mom and Dad screwed up bad with you, but they miss you. We all do. Any chance you could give them one more shot?" I stared at Derek's message for hours. Part of me wanted to block the number. Another part, a part I thought I'd killed long ago, yearned to believe him. That night, I showed Lauren the message. "What do you think I should do?" I asked, hating the vulnerability in my voice. She curled against me on our couch, her expression thoughtful. "They're still your family, James. People change. Maybe they've realized what they lost." She squeezed my hand. "You don't have to decide now, but wouldn't it be worth knowing if they're sincere?" A week later, I found myself sitting across from my parents at an upscale restaurant downtown. They looked older, softer somehow. Mom cried when she saw me. Dad's hands trembled as he reached for his water. "We were terrible parents to you," Mom said, her voice breaking. "There's no excuse. We favored Derek, we neglected you, we failed you, James." Dad nodded, eyes downcast. "I've regretted it every day since you left. I don't expect forgiveness, son, but I hope you'll let us try to do better." They gave me a watch, a Rolex, elegant and expensive. My first gift from them in 29 years. It felt heavy on my wrist, weighted with meaning. I wanted to believe them. Maybe I needed to. Over the next few months, we rebuilt a fragile relationship. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings. Derek seemed genuinely pleased to have me back in the fold. He'd married young, divorced quickly, and now lived in a sleek downtown condo that screamed bachelor life. When I finally brought Lauren to meet them, everyone was on their best behavior. Mom fussed over her, Dad asked about her work, and Derek watched her. Something in his gaze made me uneasy, but I dismissed it. Old paranoia, I told myself. Leftovers from childhood rivalry. Lauren and Derek hit it off immediately, both lawyers, both fitness enthusiasts, both with the same sharp sense of humor. They started meeting for coffee occasionally when their offices had them in the same part of town. Sometimes they'd train for charity runs together. "Your brother is hilarious," Lauren would say, coming home flushed from a 5-mile jog. "He told me the funniest story about your dad." I smiled and nodded, grateful that my wife and my family got along so well. How mature I was, how evolved to have moved past all that childhood resentment. What a fool I was. What a complete and utter fool. The visit started innocently enough. Derek would drop by on weekends, bringing expensive wine or tickets to games. "Just trying to make up for lost time," he'd say, clapping me on the shoulder. Soon he was coming over several times a week. I'd return from work to find him and Lauren on the couch, laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Sometimes he'd be there when I wasn't, stopping by to help with a leaky faucet or drop off a book Lauren had mentioned. "Your brother is so thoughtful," she'd say. I'd nod, pleased at their friendship, ignoring the unease in my gut. One Tuesday, I came home early with a migraine. As I walked into the living room, I saw Derek kneeling in front of Lauren, his hand on her stomach, whispering something. They jumped apart when they noticed me. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Lauren laughed. "Too high? Too fast?" "Derek was just joking about how fat I'm getting from all those pastries he keeps bringing." I let it slide, chalking it up to my own paranoia. Hadn't I spent a lifetime feeling excluded? Maybe I was just seeing problems where there weren't any. A month later, I woke at 2 a.m. and found Lauren's side of the bed empty. From the bathroom came soft laughter. I got up to check on her and glimpsed her sitting on the edge of the tub, texting rapidly. When she heard me, she quickly locked her phone. "Who's that?" I asked. "Just Diane from the office," she said, not meeting my eyes. But I'd seen the contact, just the letter D. 2 weeks later, Lauren told me she was pregnant. My heart nearly burst with joy. I swung her around the kitchen, already planning nursery colors and college funds. "This is everything I've ever wanted," I told her. She smiled and kissed me, but something in her eyes seemed distant. Derek's visits increased. He was there when I left for work, there when I got home, always hovering around Lauren, always touching her, a hand on her shoulder, brushing hair from her face. One night, I lay awake long after Lauren had fallen asleep, my mind racing with suspicions I didn't want to acknowledge. Her phone sat on her nightstand, screen down. I picked it up. She'd told me her password once. 1229, Derek's birthday, I realized with a jolt. The messages loaded, hundreds of them, dating back months. Derek. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about how you taste." Lauren. "Miss you already. Jay is working late again tonight if you want to come over. Derek. Can't wait to call you mine forever. Lauren. Me too. Just have to wait for the baby to be born, then everything will fall into place. Derek. You think he'll figure it out? Lauren. No way. He's too stupid to suspect anything. After I have the baby, I'll divorce him, and he'll be paying child support for our little family. I felt like I'd been shot. The phone slipped from my hands. Lauren stirred but didn't wake. I spent the rest of the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, piecing together all the moments I'd ignored. The whispers that stopped when I entered rooms, the work dinners that left her smelling like Derek's cologne. When morning came, I placed her phone on the kitchen table. She walked in and froze when she saw her phone, unlocked, with the messages displayed. Is this baby even mine? My voice sounded hollow. She tried denial first. Of course it is. What are you talking about? I pointed at the screen. I saw everything, Lauren. You and Derek, the plan to take my money. Her face changed then. The mask dropped completely. She sighed, not with remorse but with annoyance. Fine, James. Derek and I are in love. Think whatever you want. Rage surged through me. You two planned this? Made me the fool? You expect me to pay child support for Derek's kid? She leaned against the counter, unbothered. You will pay, James. That's the law. How could you do this? I whispered. I gave you everything. Lauren laughed, actually laughed. Everything? Your sad little salary? Your boring life? Derek and I have real chemistry. We're alike. And my parents, they knew about this? She shrugged. They're excited about the baby. They don't care who the father is, as long as it's got Winter's blood. It all clicked then. The reconciliation, the sudden interest in my life. It had never been about making amends. They wanted back in so they could take from me again. This time, my wife, my supposed child, my dignity. I walked out that morning with nothing but my wallet and car keys. By afternoon, I'd filed for divorce. They'd taken everything from me, again. But this time, I wouldn't just disappear. This time, I would make them pay. The day after filing for divorce, I called my parents. Despite everything, some childish part of me still hoped they'd be outraged on my behalf, that they'd finally see Derek for who he truly was. I was wrong. Mom, Dad, Lauren's been cheating on me. With Derek. The baby isn't even mine. Silence stretched across the line. Then my mother sighed, not in shock but in frustration. James, you need to understand Lauren's position. She wasn't happy with you and Derek is better suited for her. My father's voice chimed in. Derek and Lauren are in love, son. You can't stand in the way of true love. What about me? I asked, my voice breaking. What about what I've been through? Don't be so dramatic, James, my father said flatly. Everyone makes sacrifices. I hung up, hands shaking. I'd expected many reactions, but not this cold dismissal of my pain. Though why was I surprised? They'd been dismissing me my entire life. A week later, it got worse. Derek posted pictures of himself and Lauren on social media. Finally free to love who I was meant to be with, read the caption. Lauren's stomach was prominently displayed, her hand resting protectively over the bump, my brother's child. My parents commented immediately, so happy for you both. True love always finds a way. My sister-in-law from my father's side messaged me, did you see this? I'm so sorry, James. Before I could respond, she sent another, oh my God, your parents are hosting a party for them this weekend? A celebration of new love? That's cruel. I wasn't invited, of course. When the divorce proceedings began, Lauren claimed I'd been controlling, that I'd forced her to quit her job, that I'd isolated her from friends. None of it was true. I'd supported her career, encouraged her independence. But the judge seemed swayed by her tears, by the character witnesses she'd lined up, including my own parents. My mother took the stand, eyes downcast, voice meek. James has always had issues with jealousy. Even as a child, he couldn't stand when Derek received attention. My father nodded along, adding, we tried to help him, but he pushes people away. Lauren tried her best with him. I sat there paralyzed, as my own family systematically destroyed my character in court. In the end, I lost a significant chunk of my savings. Lauren got my car. A small consolation was that the house remained mine, as it had been purchased before our marriage. After the final hearing, I sat alone in the empty house, surrounded by spaces where Lauren's things had been. The silence was deafening. For weeks, I barely functioned, going to work on autopilot, coming home to stare at walls, wondering if this hollow feeling would ever subside. But slowly, rage replaced despair. If they wanted to see me broken, I'd show them just how wrong they were. I threw myself into work with an intensity that alarmed even my most ambitious colleagues. 60-hour weeks became 80-hour weeks. I took on the projects nobody wanted, solved the problems everyone else found impossible. I made myself indispensable. While Derek flaunted his new family on social media, while my parents doted on their new grandchild, I climbed. One promotion, then another. I saved aggressively, invested wisely. 2 years after the divorce, I was made partner at my firm. My salary nearly tripled. I bought a sleek new car, better than the one Lauren had taken. I renovated the house, erasing every trace of the life we'd shared. I dated casually, but kept everyone at arm's length. Never again would I be so vulnerable. The night of my promotion, I sat on my deck with an expensive scotch, finally allowing myself to feel something like pride. I'd rebuild my life from ashes. I'd proven I didn't need them, any of them. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I'd deleted but still recognized instantly. My father's. "James, we need to talk. It's important. Family matter." Then another buzz. "It's about money." Of course it was. What else could they possibly want from me now? I stared at my father's text for a long time before deleting it without reply. Whatever financial crisis they were experiencing wasn't my problem. I'd spent the past 2 years rebuilding my life piece by painful piece. My promotion to partner came with perks I'd never imagined possible. A substantial salary increase, a company car, a sleek black Audi that made my old car look like a child's toy, and most importantly, respect. My colleagues no longer saw me as the quiet guy with the pretty wife. They saw me as the man who could solve impossible problems, who worked harder than anyone, who never backed down. For the first time since childhood, I felt genuinely free. The constant need for validation, the gnawing emptiness, those feelings had begun to fade. I wasn't happy exactly, but I was content, self-sufficient, whole. To celebrate my promotion, I treated myself to dinner at Archer's, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. I rarely posted on social media anymore. Too many painful memories. Too many photos of Derek, Lauren, and their child, my alleged niece, that would pop up unexpectedly. But that night, flush with triumph, I snapped a picture of my meal and the champagne, adding a simple caption, "Celebrating new beginnings." That was my unwitting mistake. The next morning, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "James, I miss you so much. Please come home." I ignored it. Then another came. "We need to talk. It's important." After 2 years of radio silence, 2 years during which they'd posted countless photos of family gatherings I wasn't invited to, gushing captions about what a wonderful father Derek was, they suddenly remembered my existence. The timing wasn't lost on me. For a week, I ignored the increasingly desperate messages. Then my mother showed up at my office, her eyes red-rimmed, wearing a dress I recognized as her church best. "James," she cried, loud enough for everyone to hear, "why won't you answer our calls? We're your family." I ushered her into a conference room, acutely aware of the curious stares from my colleagues. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "We need you to come home," she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Please, James, just come for dinner. Hear us out." "There's nothing to hear." "It's a family emergency," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "Your father, he's not well." It was a lie. I could see it in the way she couldn't quite meet my gaze. But causing a scene at my workplace would undo everything I'd built. So I reluctantly agreed to stop by their house that weekend. The address they gave me wasn't our old family home, but a newer, larger house in an upscale neighborhood. So much for financial troubles, I thought bitterly as I pulled into the driveway. Inside told a different story. The rooms were sparsely furnished, with obvious gaps where pieces should have been. A faint mustiness hung in the air, as if the cleaning service had been let go. My mother led me to the living room where my father sat alone, his usual confident posture replaced by a defeated slump. "Where's Derek?" I asked. "Upstairs," my mother said quickly. "Lauren's resting." An awkward silence followed. I didn't sit down. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Derek lost his job. The child support payments aren't enough to maintain their lifestyle. We're having some financial difficulties. We thought you might be able to help. The audacity of it stole my breath. After everything, the years of neglect, the betrayal, the lies in court, they expected me to open my wallet? Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to give money to the man who stole my wife and tried to trick me into raising his child? He's your brother, my mother pleaded. Family helps family. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made them both flinch. Is that what you told Derek when he was sleeping with my wife? Is that what you told yourselves when you testified against me in court? I turned to leave. My father called after me, desperation cracking his voice. James, please. We sold our house to help them. We've got nothing left. That sounds like a personal problem, I said, walking out. The sky had darkened while I was inside, and rain began to fall as I headed to my car. A figure stepped out from behind a large oak tree. Derek, soaked and disheveled, looking nothing like the golden boy I remembered. James, he called, his voice barely audible over the rain. Wait. My parents hurried out behind me, standing on the porch, watching. Derek approached slowly, hands outstretched like he was calming a wild animal. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but it's bad, James. I lost everything. The firm let me go. We're about to lose the house. Lauren's talking about leaving. How is any of that my concern? I asked coldly. We're brothers, he said, rain streaming down his face. Don't abandon me when I'm down, please. I looked at him, really looked at him. My golden brother reduced to begging in the rain. My parents hovering anxiously on the porch of a house they couldn't afford. The family that had never been mine, now wanting a piece of the life I'd built without them. If you're so desperate, I said quietly, try begging on the streets. Strangers might pity you. I don't. I got into my car, ignoring their calls as I drove away, leaving them standing in the downpour. In my rearview mirror, I watched them grow smaller, 3 figures huddled in the rain until they disappeared completely. 3 days after I left them in the rain, Derek showed up at my door. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled. The golden boy had tarnished. You can't just cut us off, he snarled, pushing past me into the foyer. Get out, I said quietly. You think you're so much better than us now? He paced my living room like a caged animal. With your fancy job and your nice car, you're nothing but a vindictive piece of shit. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Are you done? I'll make you regret this, he hissed. I'll tell everyone what you're really like, how you abandoned your family when they needed you. I laughed. Go ahead, tell them how you slept with my wife, how you all conspired to steal my money. See who they believe. His face contorted with rage. This is all because you've always been jealous of me. Admitted it. You're right, I replied, my voice eerily calm. I am getting revenge, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. He lunged at me then, but years of rage had prepared me for this moment. I sidestepped easily, and he stumbled past me. Get out before I call the police, I said. When the lawsuit papers arrived a week later, I wasn't surprised. Lauren was suing for increased support payments, claiming financial hardship. But I was ready this time. I hired the best family lawyer in the state and built an ironclad case. I gathered testimonies from colleagues who'd seen Lauren with Derek long before our divorce. I found distant relatives who'd heard my parents openly discuss their preference for Derek all my life. I even tracked down Lauren's college roommate, who revealed Lauren had bragged about landing a rich lawyer's brother after meeting Derek. In court, my attorney was merciless. He exposed the deliberate manipulation, the calculated extraction of my finances, the organized character assassination. By the time he finished, even the judge looked disgusted. The ruling was swift. Not only was I not required to pay increased support, all future payments were terminated. Derek and Lauren were ordered to pay my legal fees. As I walked out of the courtroom, I passed Lauren sobbing into her hands. Derek stood rigid with fury, his face scarlet. My parents sat motionless, too shocked to even look at me. I thought it was over, but when I arrived home, they were waiting. All 3 of them stood on my doorstep like angry specters from my past. My father stepped forward, pointing a trembling finger at my chest. You ungrateful son, you've betrayed your family. I met his gaze steadily. No, You betrayed me first. Derek suddenly rushed me, fist raised. I pivoted, grabbed his outstretched arm, and used his momentum to send him tumbling down my front steps. He landed hard, the wind knocked out of him. I walked down slowly until I stood over him. This is the last warning you get. Stay away from me, or next time I won't be so gentle. They left without another word. Later, I heard through mutual acquaintances what happened to them all. Within months, Lauren left Derek, taking their daughter with her to another state. Derek, unemployable after word spread about the lawsuit, moved back in with my parents. They were forced to sell their new house and move to a small apartment. Former friends stopped inviting them to social events. Family members whispered about them at gatherings. My family had finally reaped what they'd sown. The golden facade had cracked, revealing the rot beneath. As for me, I thrived. I dated occasionally, but kept my heart guarded. I bought a vacation home in the mountains. I mentored young professionals who reminded me of myself at their age. Sometimes people ask if I miss having a family. I tell them the truth. I never really had one. What I have now, peace, success, self-respect, is far more valuable than the illusion of family I chased for so many years. The past is closed now, and I never look back.